Welcome back to the Map for College learning community. My name is Ernest Manelli, founder of Map for College. This video will focus on understanding admissions yield and admissions rate statistics when it comes to college admissions. So most students and families understand the admissions rate. That tends to dominate the conversation. What's the rate of acceptance? How competitive is the school? I prefer to look first at a school's yield. So every college or university needs to fill seats with quality students. They need to fill their program and constantly replenish their student body each year by admitting a new class of freshmen, a new class of incoming students that will make their program that much better for the future. So understanding the admissions yield comes down to a statistical reality that the yield is the percentage of students who are offered admission who subsequently matriculate to that school. Some examples of colleges and universities that have consistently high yields of performance would be Harvard, MIT, University of Chicago, Princeton, Stanford. Those are just some of the many colleges that have a very high percentage, very consistently high percentage, year after year for their admissions yield. Also, the United States Service Academies also boast significantly high admissions yield rates. U.S. Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, Naval Academy, West Point. So in those situations with the service academies, students who apply to service academies tend to have a preference that those might be among their top choices, if not their top choice. So if you're applying to a service academy, you have a higher likelihood of matriculating than the average student applying to the average college in America. So there is somewhat of a self-selected sample reality with students applying to the service academies, because after all, many of those students tend to be driven, focused, disciplined. They tend to have more long-range career goals in place at a younger age. So that's just to say those are the statistical realities. Now, getting back to the discussion about admissions yield, the reason why I find this dynamic fascinating when considering the options for students and families would be that the schools with the most consistently high yield rates tend to also correlate with the most consistently competitive schools in the nation. So when you are creating your proper allocation of schools on your list of colleges, I professionally believe that you should have an allocation of reach schools to target schools that represents approximately a 1-to-2 ratio. In other words, for every reach school on your list, and to me, my definition, professionally and personally, of a reach school would be a college or university in which your academic profile and your overall portfolio of work and what you could contribute to the college and to the overall community, your performance at the secondary school level and your potential contribution at the college level, those elements that are going in your favor, for a reach school, those elements overlap with some but not all of the metrics for a college. In other words, you would be a competitive candidate to some degree, but there are so many other competitive candidates that you have to face the reality that this is a reach school. And the conversation I recently had with a student that I was mentoring and talking about college options, this student was asking about a particular college that had a 7% admissions rate, 7 to 8% admissions rate year after year. And so the conversation centered around, well, this particular student's high school still does the class ranking system. And this student was in the second decile. So this student was somewhere between the 10-20% range. And when we got right down to it, the student was pretty much at the 15% range, top 15% of the high school class. Member of the National Honor Society, great student, fabulous grades, wonderful ability to contribute to the campus environment at the college level. And we had a discussion about all the strengths this student has. And then the student was saying, well, I really want to apply to this Reach school that has a 7 point something percent admissions rate. And I just said, okay, here's the cautionary tale. Just be prepared for the fact that you might not be in the top 7% of the international and national application pool because you're not currently at the top 7% of your high school's core group of students in your graduating class that's scheduled to be in the next application cycle. So when I framed it in that context, the student said, oh yeah, how am I going to be top 7% of the world if I'm only top 15% of my high school? Now, the conversation then flipped and we decided, okay, let's put this on your list of schools. The student ultimately decides, but the student said, let's put this on my list of schools, but I know it's a reach. And if I get in, I'll be very happy. I'll put my heart and soul into the application, but I won't cry any tears of sadness if I get rejected because I know the odds going in. So a reach school is where you meet some but not all of the metrics. And actually, in many cases, if you're in the top 15%, you're applying to a school with a 7% admissions rate, I might try to persuade you toward other schools that are more in your wheelhouse, but every student has their own autonomy of choice. Now, a target school would represent, again, my definition of a target school, would represent some college or university that you find appealing and you find that you could make a significant contribution, you'd be happy with the educational program there, and you meet some, if not all, of the metrics. Like you meet a high degree of the metrics of what they're looking for the weighted grade point average, test scores if those are under consideration. I know that some colleges and universities are still test optional, but if given the combination of your metrics of what you have on your transcript, your strength of schedule, weighted grade point average, activities, possible future contribution at the college level, if you meet many of the metrics, if not all of the metrics of what the school is looking for, then you'd be a reasonably competitive candidate and it would be a target. Again, it's not a slam dunk, but you have a higher probability of getting an admissions offer and you have a higher probability of potentially getting some form of merit-based financial aid if that is being considered as a possible context for your decision. So basically there's a concept of affordability as well with admissions yield. In some states where the state public university system is really high quality, I'm thinking Massachusetts, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, California, where there are extensive UC systems, like in California, the UC system is so pervasive, the University of California system, that the private colleges and universities sometimes have to compete just to get the same competitive students that they're seeking because there's so many very affordable, very academically high quality public education options. There's so many options at the public education level that the private schools have to compete that much more. So my reason for sharing that is that if you see a school that is a private college or university and it might have a slightly higher rate of admission and maybe a slightly lower yield than you were expecting, just understand the context that if that's a private school competing within a heavily competitive marketplace of in-state public school tuition, you have to take that into account. So basically, there is a return on investment factor for families. Students and families are seeking a quality educational opportunity at an affordable price that will return your investment for future college and career options. You want to set yourself up for success both near term and long term. And to provide a deeper perspective about the admissions yield, that when you consider the yield in the context of the admissions rate, when you look at your portfolio of schools, and I encourage students to diversify their portfolio of schools the way that you would diversify an investment portfolio. Ideally, students should have some reach schools, some target schools. Students should have some public college university options, some private college and university options. You might want to consider the context of geography. Some students will apply to schools just in their geographical region. Well, that's great, but understand that many other students are going to be applying from your region, whatever that region may be, and that there would be the highest percentage of applicants from the closest proximity, usually within a 200 to a 250 mile radius of any given campus. That's typically where the bulk of the applications come from for most colleges, most universities in America. So you might want to consider diversifying your portfolio and having some schools that might be in a different geographical area of the country, but that have comparable levels of educational quality for what you're seeking. So as you consider your statistics and your options, and as you weigh and calibrate all of the different considerations, I would strongly encourage students and families to consider the admissions yield of each college and university you're considering on your list, as well as the admissions rate. And also understand the context of the public versus private discussion when it comes to the level of competitiveness that some of those private schools have to go to, the lengths they have to go to recruit some of those same competitive students to their program when there's such an affordable in-state option. And again, some states have more viable in-state choices than others, so that's something to consider based on your geographical area of the country. So at Map for College, we seek to help each student and family to understand their choices that are available to them, to maximize their opportunities for success. We help some students to aim a little higher. Some students need a little bit more of a boost of confidence. And correspondingly with some students, we provide a very gentle, very affirmative reality check in terms of providing that proper guidance, because we really do want to see students calibrate their list of schools along a spectrum of reach schools and target schools in such a way that you gain value from your choices and you predict a higher level of success for your outcomes, so that the student will have choices available to him or available to her as the college considerations and as the decisions come back. And as I always preface, regardless of how proficient the student is and how outstanding that student might look on paper and through an application portal, you're going to get accepted some places, you're going to get rejected other places. You don't always know which one's going to be which until the decisions come out. You might get deferred from an early application pool to a regular application pool. You might get waitlisted. So we help students, as they would say in track and field, we help students prepare for the race, run the race, and then run through the tape, as they say in track and field. We help you throughout the process. And once you get into schools, we help you to consider your options, think about short-term and long-term benefits, both for your academic learning, your personal reflections about the schools that interest you, your career options for the long term, how things would be under different contingencies when you're weighing the relative cost and benefit, both personally and financially, for particular schools. We help you with all of that, and we create and foster a collaborative discussion environment in which we really build a team-based approach with students and families. So if you'd like to learn more, I would be happy to talk with you, set up a consultation, and we help students and families to create a personalized action plan for college. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Have a fantastic day.